Konbanwa, minasan. Genki desu ka? Welcome to the Tachi Yomi podcast. I'm your host, Joseph, and here is Benjamin.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Benjamin. I actually recently heard you don't want to be called Benjamin anymore, but now you're going by Ben. Is that true?
I really don't care.
That's what you say. Do you like Ben better?
Whatever you want.
Okay, fine. I'll call you Toilet then.
Sure. I love that. Just keep calling me that.
Alright, sounds good. Alright, Toilet. What? No, I'm sorry. That's horrible. Alright, Ben. So what manga or anime are we going to be talking about today?
We'll be talking about Your Name, or aka Kimi no Nawa.
I see. Is this a manga or an anime?
This is a movie, actually. It's an animated film.
Yeah. So I think it came out in 2016 or so. I did some research. It's one of the most popular movies in Japan of all time. I think it's the highest grossing anime of all time. So it beat out Spirited Away and all those other Ghibli movies. So it's the most popular anime of all time. And it's actually the fourth most popular movie in Japan of all time. So it did incredibly, incredibly well in Japan. And I think abroad too, it was really popular in Asia and other countries.
Yeah, I was at the time was in Japan in high school, but everyone was talking about it, and I think I was pretty much the only one that hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah, I remember I was over here in America, and even over here I would hear people online or people in Japan, a lot of my friends were talking about how good it was and people going back and watching it 3 or 4 times, which I think is rare for a movie. If people go back and watch it more than once, that usually means there's something special about the movie, or for some reason people really like it. So actually I'm interested. Why did you not watch it at the time?
I didn't go watch movies because I didn't have much. I guess I didn't have much time, and I mean I did have time, but I didn't think of going to watch it, and no one asked me to go watch it, and I didn't have any friends. I was lonely. I was depressed, and
that's a bunch of hogwash. Whatever, man.
No one asked me, and I really didn't care that much.
I guess your close friends didn't really go watch it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of true. If your friend group aren't interested, sometimes it's kind of hard. That's the thing about movies. It's kind of awkward to go to a movie theater all by yourself and to buy a ticket or something like that. So I guess I kind of understand. I've missed several movies I wanted to see because my friends weren't interested in going, and going by yourself is kind of awkward at times. But I guess if you're really interested, you go anyway. But still, yeah.
And movies in Japan are really expensive, so I didn't want to spend as much money. That's
true. They're so bloody expensive. They're $12 or $15 a movie or something like that. Even more sometimes, right? $20 sometimes for adults. It's ridiculous. Yeah. I think that was one of my favorite things coming to America is movies, depending on the place, you can get it anywhere from the cheapest $6 or $7. Even if it's expensive, maybe $10 or $12, I guess, for 3D or something. But still, movies are just a lot cheaper here, I feel like. Yeah. Have you gone to any movies since you've come over here?
I've been to a couple. I went to Black Panther. I went to, I don't know, major Marvel films, and yeah.
Yeah. Do you like movies over here or over there better?
I mean, they show the same movies they show over here in Japan. It's just later, so I guess I like it over here that they show it on time, or it's just...
Oh, yeah, it comes out earlier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about movies is that popcorn and drinks and things like that are bloody expensive. They're probably 4 times or 5 times more expensive than normal. Was it like that in Japan?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same.
Really? I guess maybe I just never bought it over there, so I never really thought of it. When I'm over here, sometimes I buy it, and then every time I buy it, I'm always thinking oh, it's so expensive. But I guess that's a rookie mistake, right? I shouldn't even be buying it at movie theaters. But
I mean, that's how they get their money for the movie theaters. They charge so much on the food, drinks, and all that, and then that's why they could, I guess, sell the tickets a bit cheaper. I guess so.
Yeah. I was reading that. That's true. I was reading that movie theaters make like 90 to 95% of their money on those drinks and snacks and stuff like that. They don't make any money from the tickets. So, yeah. Well, all right. Well, I guess we should start talking about Kimi no Nawa, Your Name. What's the plot summary of this? If you were going to explain this to someone who's never seen this before, what happens in this animation or this movie?
Well, if you're coming to listen to our podcast, I mean, I guess you don't care about spoilers, but, you know, just if
all right, spoiler alert.
Just if you haven't watched this video, you know, major plot, you know, spoiler warnings, you know, if you came to here listen to this podcast, you know, pause this right now, you know, take 2 hours out of your time and just go watch the movie and then come back 2 hours later. Yeah, okay. Just, you know, but we'll be talking about, there is like a major plot twist, I would say, and I was I guess surprised too. So basically the plot of this story is that there's this guy that lives in Tokyo, and then there's this girl that lives in the country, and they basically it starts out as they find out that they're swapping bodies. So like the girl wakes up and she is not in her own body. She's in this other guy's body, and she doesn't know who he is to begin with. And the guy wakes up in the girl's body, and he has no idea where he is. And you know, like most of the time, I feel like he tries to figure out, you know, where she, or like when he wakes up. When it's kind of confusing, but yeah, basically they swap bodies and they live the other person's life. That's like a big key. And then that's like the first half of the movie. Yeah. And they try to figure out, and I feel like they finally do. And then there's this meteor that's our shooting star, I guess.
Yeah.
And that is,
I think it's a comet, because they say it comes around every like 1,200 years, right?
Yeah, it's a comet, and there's this comet, and you find out in the plot that that comet actually hits the town or village,
or part of the comet breaks off, right?
Yeah, it breaks off and it hits the town where the girl lives.
The town the girl's living, yeah.
Yeah, and he also figures out that she was, you know, she was actually, they weren't in the same time frame. Like, she was 3 years behind him.
Yeah, so that's the big plot twist, right? We see them, like, swapping bodies, and they're going back and living each other's lives, trying to fool everyone, I guess, and they slowly start to fall in love. So this is a romance, I guess. It's a time-swapping, body-swapping romantic comedy, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that big plot twist is, like you were saying, the big plot twist is they find out they're actually not swapping bodies at the same time, but she's 3 years in the past and he's 3 years in the future. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. And then, like, he finds out that she was actually dead 3 years ago, and, you know, he can't...
Yeah, she's killed by that comet that hit the town and destroyed everything, right?
And so he tries to find her, and from his memories, he, you know, goes to places where she went, and, you know, he goes back to the town where she was, which is already destroyed, and then he just tries to, like, then basically it's about, like, how he like, tells, like, the last time he swaps his body, it was actually a day before, like, the meteor hits, so he tries to, you know, prevent that from happening, and yeah, it's basically them falling in love, and then they finally meet each other at the very end for the first time, and they ask their names.
Yeah, they're swapping bodies back and forth, and all of them stops happening, and he tries to figure out why. And I guess he finds out the reason their bodies stopped swapping is because a comet hit the town or whatever, destroyed the town, and she's dead. So he goes back to the hometown to go visit her, right? And then there's this Katawaredoki, or this Tachi, this time where basically twilight, and in Japanese culture... Oh, anyway, we're going to talk about this more, but it's this time where it's supposed to be where the boundaries between worlds are blurred. for a few minutes during twilight, and so he's able to meet up with her, and he's able to warn her that it's coming. And then together they try to warn the town and the people so that they would escape. And then they see each other and they meet each other again. So, well, what did you think about the movie? Just straight up your opinion. I guess you said, so this is your first time watching it, right?
Yeah. I thought it was a very well laid out movie and like a very good plot, I would say. Like, and there weren't too many characters, which I liked. You know, some movies like they just throw like character after character at you, and this one was like, you know, there were side characters, but the main focus was the two, and they just kept with that, and you know, they kept going back and forth, and I like how the story was told, you know, not from one person's perspective, but there's multiple, and there's the guys and then there's the girls, and well, you know, I should refer to with them their names. Mitsuha is the girl, by the way.
Yeah.
And Taki is the guy. So those two are the main characters in the story, and I just it was a really good movie in the sense that, you know, it was a good romance, but like the animation was of course wonderful, and
that's something. What do you want to talk about the animation a little bit? The animation was really gorgeous, don't you think?
Yeah.
Have you seen an animation style like this? It's kind of unique or rare. I guess it's more common now, but still. Yeah, it was a very beautifully animated movie.
I would say that, like, of course, there's a lot of, like, detailed things, but, like, the comment was, like, very beautiful. I thought that was the highlight, I guess. Like, but, like, it was, I guess it was kind of similar to, like, kind of Studio Ghibli. Like, of course, Studio Ghibli is like unique and it's kind of its own breed, but like, it was like, it kind of reminded me of that, and like also like there's like really good music too, which we'll probably talk about later. But like, like the music. One of the things I liked about the animation, I felt like it was very colorful. It was a very visually pleasing movie to watch. The colors really popped out. There was bright reds, bright oranges, bright blues. Like, all the colors were really deep and powerful. And, like, watching it was a very fun experience. It's hard to describe, but like you were saying, like, the comment, was that, like, a purple, bluish color? Or no, purple and, like, whitish color? Or, like... It was, like, blue and red, too.
Yeah, it was mixed together. But just the whole movie, too, it was a very beautiful movie to watch. Just so the animation really certainly helped the movie, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Yeah. And you were also saying, like, so another component that really made the movie so good. So, of course, not just the visuals were good, it's the sound, too, right? Sorry, I cut you off. You were talking about the sound.
No. Like, most of the music was done by Radwimps, and there's this really popular band. I guess they're kind of like semi-rock band. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess you could say, like, it's a mix of rock and pop and stuff like that.
But, like, they did a really good job with their... new music and their songs, and like I forgot, like the highlight is like Kimi no Zen 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 Se, and like that's basically you know, it means like your past life, but like it means it, you know, basically the message of the song is that like, you know, I've been searching for generations, and I've always wanted to see you, and it really like captures the movie, and you know, it was a really good soundtrack, and kind of a bit sentimental, but it was good in that sense that like it kind of made you like sad, but like in a good way, I would say. And
yeah, I was just thinking this is probably what made this movie so good, because there's a lot of movies that has a good plot. There's a lot of movies that have likable characters. There are a lot of movies that have good soundtrack or music, or like a beautiful cinematography or visuals or something like that. But it's rare that they have all 3 or 4 of those qualities. And this movie has, like, all of those qualities. And I think that's one of the reasons why it became such a smash hit in Japan. Is because in each one of those, it was almost like an all-star cast who was doing it. The Comics Wave Films, I think that's were the ones who produced and animated it. They did a wonderful job. The Radwimps, one of the biggest bands in Japan, they made incredible music. Just everything all around. It was just a really well done movie. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. It was very well done.
Yeah.
What did you think about the movie? You said, like, I'm pretty sure you've seen it a couple times, but, you know, like, I'm pretty sure each time you see something different, but, like, what did you see this time, I guess?
I really love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies. It's hard for me to watch because for me, I've left Japan. It's been 5 or 6 years since I lived in Japan, but I grew up there. You know, the first 18 years of my life, I spent my life there, so it's my home. And there's something about this movie that really touches a chord inside me that really makes me very sad. Not sad, sad in a good way, I guess. It really makes me homesick. And in a way, I also have this love-hate relationship with this movie. Like, it's really hard for me to watch. I hate watching this movie because every time I watch it, I personally become super emotional. I can't watch it without getting homesick, basically. And it makes me really, really miss Japan. It makes me want to go back. It kind of makes me depressed. Kind of the theme of the movie too, a lot of it has to do with loss and losing something and trying to regain something or treasuring these memories or these things that have passed. And I think those themes have, in a way, I've lost that past innocent self of who was living in Japan. And in many ways, it just touches a chord. So I hate watching it, but at the same time, like, it's one of my favorite films of all. I hate watching it because, like, how it destroys me emotionally, but, like, just in general, it's a wonderful film. It's one of my favorites of all time, for sure, but... Yeah. So, I guess we should start into doing our analysis of the movie. Was there any other comments you wanted to say? Well, you wanted to talk about the movie, what you thought about it? If not, that's okay.
No, this was the first time, like, I usually take time to think about, like, the movie, after I watch it, and, like, I literally just watched it today, and I'm, like, really fresh from it, so, like, I remember a lot, but at the same time, I haven't put much thought in it, so, like...
Like, haven't had time to really digest it yet?
Yeah, exactly, so...
Yeah, okay. Why don't we start with some of the things that we just liked about the movie, and then maybe we can go into our the things we didn't like so much, like some of the weird things or questions we had. I liked both Taki and Mitsuha. I think it's rare, but I liked both of their characters. They were interesting characters, I thought, and it was a very good contrast between the two characters too.
Yeah, they're very, extremely, like, there's, like, a contrast with them, like, how they grew up, where they are, what they're like. They're very, like, they weren't similar. Like, sometimes, like, I mean, that's good, but, like, they're very different. And I think that made it really good, like, the movie, is that, like, for example, like, Taki, he's, like, super organized. He's, like, he could work all these shifts. He isn't late. He could make his own breakfast. He could do all this stuff. And then on the other hand, like, Mitsuha is kind of a bit more laid back maybe. And, like, she does, like, more traditional, she grew up in a traditional a family of, like, where they're priests of shrines. And then, like, she kind of takes part in that tradition. And, like, but at the same time, she's a girl, like, but she could do, like, sewing and, like, she does, like, these traditional dances. And,
I think that's a good thing. There's a lot of contrast here. Why don't we talk about the contrast? So I guess there's many contrasts between these two characters. I think one of the first things you touched on is kind of like, well, there's the obvious one is the gender. So there's men being compared against women. Men, Taki is the guy, and then Mitsuha is the girl. And there's a lot of contrast between there. And I guess a lot of the comedy happens too, because for the first time a man is in a woman's body or a woman is in a man's body. And a lot of that unintentional comedy is like getting used to the body or the life of someone whose gender is different from you. And there's a lot of things you don't think about that the other gender has to constantly think about. Like Taki, he always has his legs open. He's, because as a guy, it's not a problem. But for a girl, if you're wearing a skirt, it's not a good idea to have your legs open. Or like, there's a lot of the comedy comes from things like that, or like, Mitsuha isn't used to speaking in like the guy language that Taki does. And that's like when she starts speaking, the friends are like, wait, why are you speaking like a girl, kind of? So like, there's these things, I think a lot of the unintentional comedy comes from like the difference in gender.
And I feel like, gender is a really big part of Japanese culture. Like, I know like a lot of
That's
people
true.
think about it, America is, there's all that feminism and all that, but like in Japan, like there's like this clear cut difference with like man and woman, and like even in the workplace, of course, that. But like I think that why this was such a big hit is that like like Japanese as a language, like I've read about like how foreigners come in and like there's like a manner of speech that are like it's like for French, like there's like verbs for calling how like when a man says it and when a woman says it, but like Japanese, like just a form of speech, like putting certain like I guess letters at the end of like your sentence, or like how you say it, you can kind of tell if they're a guy or female, like not just from the tone of their voice, and like it's just like that. I feel like that was a big hit in Japan because like I guess like
that's a great idea. I totally agree with you. I didn't think about that, but Japan is when it comes to genders, the gender roles are very traditional. I think in Japan much more than the rest of the world. And what this movie did is, I think as they swapped bodies, you got to experience a little bit of what it's like about the other gender. And it was very interesting. I think people got to see the opposite gender in a way that they didn't in the past, or got to think about it in a way that wasn't different from the past. And I think this movie, in a way, kind of builds sympathy towards the other gender, right? Maybe something you don't think about in a way, but in a way it kind of explores that. And also what you're saying about language too, Japanese is one of those rare languages where if you listen to someone's words, you can instantly tell age and gender, how old the person is. There's like there's an adult version of speaking, there's a grandpa version of speaking, or grandma version of speaking, there's a childish way of speaking, and there's like different like gendered way of speaking too. There's like a cutesy girl way of saying it, there's like a sophisticated woman way to speak something, then of course there's men, there's like a cool, like, using the word orewa, kind of like a wild way of saying it, and then boku, like a more polite man way of saying it, or like, in speech, so much of it is gendered, too. I think it's a very unique language in that way.
Yeah, and, like, Japan is one of those countries that, like, especially in politics, like, there's a very low rate for women, like, in politics, and, like, I'm not saying that's bad, it's just, but it's, like, there's this really, it's stigmatized that, like, guys go out and work, they go to companies, they're, off, like, they work, and then females, they're, like, stay at home. They may have like part-time jobs, and then, some of them are like office ladies. That's what they call them. The people that work at the front desk, or like, there is this really like, I guess, generalization of like women and men. That's really strong in Japan, I might say. And like, like there's public baths, but like it's separated by gender. And, like there's all these stuff that are like,
just traditional gender roles.
Yeah. And like Japan really like has a heavy emphasis on tradition, and I feel like that kind of carries on in like gender roles and like what a guy should be, what a woman should be like, and like how you walk, how you talk, how you all that.
Yeah. So that's actually a great segue. Another theme I feel like that is being contrasted between the two is modernity versus tradition. And Taki, he lives in Tokyo. He lives in a very modernized society. He takes the train to school. He's surrounded by skyscrapers. His school is like on the top of not a skyscraper, but like a 10-story, 12-story building or something like that. He lives in a very highly modernized part of the world, whereas Mitsuha lives in the country. She literally in the boonies. She kind of says it herself, the inaka. And they're saying a train only comes like once a day or something like that. They don't have any cafes. The convenience store shuts down at like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, or it's very much the inaka. And I think another one of these themes that it's being compared is this modernity versus a modern Japan versus traditional Japan.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I really like that is like, I kind of grew up in between. Like where I grew up was like, it wasn't too much of this city, but at the same time, it was really country. So like it was, we weren't too far from Tokyo, but at the same time, like we had this country aspect. So I could really relate to both sides in that sense. Yeah. And like, that's what I kind of liked about like, some people who only, I guess what was really big for this is because it like covered all, like everyone that lives in Japan has like, they could identify to one of those. I think that's why it was like really, you know, it was really popular because like, you know, all the people who watched it, they're like, oh, I'm from the country. I could really feel, I could relate to that. You know, how she's like, you know, there's no cafes, you know, convenience stores should be open 24/7, but they aren't. But like Taki, on the other hand, you know, like his school is in part of the building, is really high up. They have like basketball courts on top of, you know, their school. And like, it's just that, like those minor stuff, or like how he works at, and, you know, like I guess a bit more high-end restaurant, but like, you know, that's his part-time job. And like, on the other hand, like Mitsuha doesn't have any part-time job, you know, she's just with her
she's working as a priestess or as a miko, right?
Like, it's like how they spend their time, you know, it's just
very different.
Like, I feel like it covered like wide range of like the audience, and like that was really good. And
that's a great point. So they can you can really identify with those characters. I think along with that too, one of the reasons, I guess an underlying theme of this, maybe not so much on the forefront, but I feel like Japan also is a country that modernized very, very quickly. I think the Western world, it happened naturally or gradually over time. Whereas in Japan was a country, especially in the Meiji era, back in the late 1800s, Japan modernized in 30 years what the rest of the Western world did in like 200 years. It modernized so rapidly and so quickly. And I feel like there's also a tension between the traditional Japan and the modernized Japan. And there's this tension, people in the Japanese identity, that is kind of hard to describe, but that tension exists between these two parts of yourself. And it's hard for Japanese people, I think, to reconcile that, because we have these traditional cultures that go back 2,000, 3,000 years. We have this deep connection with our past and our culture that we really value and we want to keep. But at the same time, Japan is one of the leading nations in the world when it comes to technology, science, and innovation and things like that. It has been for the past 20 or 30 years that has been, you know, one of the top 5 countries. You know, it was one of the leading countries in many ways. And it's been really hard. What do you think? Do you agree with me that it's kind of hard for these, in a way, it's also this contrast too. It's hard to reconcile these two identities. Yeah. At times there's tension between the modern and the past, right? In Japan?
Mm-hmm. I really agree with that. And then that, like, as a Japanese, you kind of like, you grow up with that tradition, you know, for New Year's, you go to the shrine, you know, for like, in you know, August 15th, that's the day when they have like the ancestors come back, and you know, there's that really traditional part of Japanese, and like, you know, people do that because their family's done it, you know, they've been doing it for like literally generations. It's, you know, and like, I really agree with, like, Japan had a really rapid modernization, and like, you know, they what they aimed for is like, you know, they were like, I wouldn't say the Stone Ages, but they were like really behind, like, you know, in like the, I guess in like the 19th century, and then they noticed that they needed to catch up. So like the government made an effort, like as a country, to like catch up and, you know, surpass foreign countries. That was like their whole model for like, I guess like the end of the 19th century going into 20th century. And like, that's why they modernized in a very rapid pace. And then, you know, like despite having all that traditional ways and history, and then they changed their ways and, you know, try to catch up. And then, you know, again, after World War II, when Japan was defeated and, you know, America came in and rebuilt Japan, and then they, again, started to industrialize again. There's, I would say, kind of the second industrialization. And then now they're, you know, big car companies, you know, all these, like, technological, you know, corporations and, you know, all these big firms. And yeah,
we saw a little bit of like the darkness of that too, especially during World War II. What happens when they took that modernization way too far, way too quickly?
Yeah.
In a way too. We saw that and the dangers of that. And I think another thing too, why this movie works so well, that's being contrast. There's always, in a romantic comedy trope, there's always like the guy and the girl, they come from two different worlds. But like in Japan, in this movie, for an example, even though it's set in the same country, it's set in Japan, they very much live in almost two entirely different worlds. It's almost like a foreign country. You know, that's one of the things that are so unique about Japan, is because it's such a mountainous country that each region, each state prefecture, basically, or the state, is so isolated from the other ones that basically, if you go to a different part of Japan, the language is different, the dialect is different, the culture is different. It's so unique and so different. And that there's also this struggle to, you're literally kind of, and even though you're supposed to be the same nationality, you're entering a different world. And in many ways, like, I think this is one of those things that works in this movie. Like you're saying, it covers, you can identify with almost someone, at least someone in the movie, but also you understand this feeling of not being able to sometimes relate to another part of Japan because it's so different from where you were and where you grew up.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And, America kind of shows that part. America is such a big country. Each state is really its own country. And, there's such a different culture, even with the South and the North and, East and West. But
I would like to say probably America is more geological just because America is such a huge country.
Yeah.
I think in Japan's case, it's more like a tradition has been ingrained and built in that land for many, many years. So it's more from time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be the difference.
Definitely that. I think there's more emphasis on time, and America is more geographical. Like, there's this saying, like, 100 miles in Japan is really long, but 1,000 years in America is like really long. It's just like that difference. America geographically is so large, but at the same, Japan is like, there's been thousands of years of history. Like 100 years is like, oh, that's just like a couple 100 years ago. It's just like that, and
that's half the lifetime of a country like of America, but to Japan, that's only a tiny blip in the history, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess we compared a lot of the themes. Are there any other themes that we see compared between the two? I guess with tradition too. So Mitsuha, gender. One of the things that I thought was very interesting about Mitsuha's family is going back to genders, but it's almost all woman family. There's the grandma, and then there's the sister, and she has a dad, but the dad has left the home.
Well,
he was kicked
out of the house. Like, the grandmother was like, if you're not gonna, follow the family tradition, and if you're not gonna be like the priest, just get out. And he wanted to be a politician, so he just went on that path. And I feel like, and there's also like for Mitsuha, there's like the lack of like parents. Like, her mother dies when she's a young age, and her father leaves also. And like, she pretty much grows up with her grandmother and a younger sister. And like, her grandmother was the one that kind of took care of her. And like, I guess that's why she's a bit more maybe unstable. I don't know. That's just me thinking. But like,
I don't know if it's
not unstable, but like it's definitely different from Taki for like where he has a father. But like
Taki we don't see Taki's mom either. That's a very men society. His house is not exactly clean. It's very, it's men. He does the cooking. I think there's that contrast as well. But yeah, anyway, we should probably start going. So those are like some of the themes of the movie. We should probably go into the interesting questions of some of the problems we had. So, one of the things that I thought is a really interesting question, I don't know if there's many answers to this, but they're swapping bodies back and forth a lot throughout the first half of the movie. How the heck did none of their friends or family notice that they're different?
Besides,
do you kind of understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I really understand. Besides for a couple people, but like, I would.
Well, okay, let's talk about those couple people then.
Yeah.
So who are the only people who there's only like one technically two, but there's only a few. Who are the people who realize that they're different?
The grandmother, like, I think twice, if I remember correctly, says that, like, oh, you're not, Mitsuha, or you're like a different person. And then.
Or like, oh yeah, you must be dreaming right now.
Yeah. And then like the father, again, he kind of like when he's like, oh, you're such a different person. I don't know if he really.
Well, I think Taki, the guy, was in the girl's body, and they're going to warn their dad, who's the head of the city, the mayor, and they're trying to get everyone to evacuate the city. But since the dad thinks it's crazy, they don't understand the comments coming. And Taki runs in Mitsuha's body. This is going to get confusing really quick. But anyway, Taki in Mitsuha's body runs up and basically grabs him by the tie and yanks him. Is like, what are you fucking with me? I can't believe you. People's lives are on the line. And then the dad is like, who the heck are you? You're not my daughter. But basically, those are only two people who realize that, right?
Yeah.
But why don't the other people realize it? Like, they act and speak so differently than what they traditionally would be. Like, wouldn't you notice if your friend all of a sudden started speaking a totally different language? It's not exactly different language, but totally different way of speaking. Started acting differently. Like, Mitsa, he can never figure out how to tie her hair, so he does a ponytail every single time, but she never does. Like, the way they dress, the way they act, the language they speak, how could your friends not notice that? I don't know.
Yeah, I would be like, if I was a friend, I would probably notice. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a bit plot armor where they make it so it's kind of like, if the friends noticed, it would have been like a whole different story where they're like, who are you? And there'd be like a lot more trouble. But like, to make the story go more smooth, I guess they kind of dropped that. But I would say, if I was a friend, and, especially in Japan where you could like tell how you talk and how you dress, like, really defines you. Like, I would definitely be like, yo, what's up, dude? Like, you really look like a different person, and like, I would not, like, I don't think I would miss those signs like that.
Yeah. Another, like, I don't know, but especially with your friends, you're so close to them. Like Mitsa, she's been friends with these people her whole life. Yeah. They're childhood friends. Why don't they notice? Or like my friends would notice, or I would notice if I saw it in my friends too. I don't know. It's just interesting. So I guess another thing too, another quibble we had with the movie is the big plot point. So what's that big plot change, right? That big plot twist.
Well, it's when Taki figures out that they were in the same time period. She is actually, like, the one the comet hit, it was actually 3 years ago, and he figures out that she has already been dead 3 years ago, and she's from the past, and, they're living in a different
It's like when he goes visits her hometown, right? He's trying to figure out why they stopped swapping bodies all of a sudden.
Yeah, and then they, like, meet each other, the dawn of, day, and, like...
You mean Twilight?
Yeah, Twilight.
The Katawaredoki, right?
Yeah. And then, like, but they can't remember their names. For, like, some reason they keep on forgetting. Like, they lose memories. They can't remember the person's name and all that. And that was, like, why can't you just... You literally just say it, like, 8 times. You're like, Taki, or Mitsa. Like, you go back and watch the movie. It's just... I'm very clear that they said their names, like, multiple times and very passionately. And then they forget it, like, the next second. And I'm like, really? People, I know I'm bad at names, but, especially if it's a body swapping, you time swapping, gender swapping.
And you're like, you're in love with the person. How can you forget the name of the person you're in love with?
Yeah, it's just... That really was weird for me. I thought it was really weird. And, you've been watched it multiple times and you still think it's weird. So I think it's not, like... that I missed something. I think it was very clear that, like, for some reason they forget the other person's name, and that was, it was just weird. And
but, like, the whole theme, that's kind of like the theme of the movie, is, like, the name of the movie, Kimi no Nawa, is literally the question, hey, what is your name? That's the name of the movie, so...
Yep.
I don't know. Well, okay, let me defend this. Even though I don't want to defend it at all, I totally agree with you, but I'll be the devil's advocate. Okay, look. What's happening is there's these multiple versions of reality. There's a version of reality where, like, Mitsa survives, and there's a version of reality that Mitsa dies, right?
Yeah.
So I think, like, especially in the version of reality where Mitsa dies and all the people in that town dies from the comet, it means that Taki and that body swapping thing didn't happen because the person died. So I feel like when you're in different worlds, maybe if you're in one world, you have memories from the past, but if you're in another version of reality, you don't have the memories from the other world.
Yeah.
Okay, is that a good enough explanation?
I mean, still no, but I get your point,
Yeah.
I understand what you're trying to say, but I'm just like, nah, no. It's just like...
Okay. Well, I guess another question I had related to that is, how did they not notice that they're living in 3 years apart?
Yeah.
Like, all you have to do is look at the calendar, and you would notice, hey, wait, why is the 12th Friday? When I was back in my body, it was a totally different day. Or, like, you, like, look at the news, and they're, like, saying, like, oh, this is 2018, or this is, like, 2015, or I don't know, but they would say the day. Like, all you have to do is look anywhere. Look at a clock. Look at a freaking calendar, and you would notice.
Yeah.
You should, unless you're a total idiot, that you're not paying attention to what's happening whatsoever. I'm pretty sure you would notice that you're 3 years apart, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just really like, come on, you can't not notice that, like,
yeah,
like, yeah.
Okay. Let me also be a devil's advocate and try to defend this too, even though I'm the one who brought up this question. What if they were so overwhelmed by the gender swapping and the stress of being in another person's body that they didn't notice?
Like when they've swapped a million times and they're like, oh, I'm starting to get used to this, huh? I'm like, oh, I wonder what the day is today. Oh, what the? It's now 2018? And like, I don't know. It's just like...
Yeah, okay. That's probably a bad excuse too. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they were just under such big stress.
Yeah.
That they just... And they're swooning over each other. They were so... Well, that's the interesting thing too. At first, they really don't like each other, right?
Yeah.
They're like, she's like, don't take a bath. Don't go to the bathroom. And he's like, what am I supposed to do in your body? What if you need to go to the bathroom? Yeah. And she keeps spending all of his money too. She's like, oh, all these cafes, all this food is so good.
Yeah.
He's like, stop spending like so much my money. Stop working so much. And they're fighting back and forth over the other person's body. But
yeah.
It's funny. But you're right. It's probably to protect the plot. Anyway, maybe it's not a good reasoning, but
no, it's all good. It's just
yeah. Maybe they were just so stressed out. But they don't like each other in the beginning, but they start to kind of fall in love with each other over time, right?
Yeah. They like. I think the moment was when. Taki goes on the date with the Ogudera-san, like his
senpai, right?
Manager, like, of his job, and he hangs out with her, but like she tells him like, oh, this is a fun date, but it looks like you have someone else that you like, and he's like, no, like that, but like then he's like, yeah, actually, he couldn't answer her like, is there anyone else that you like? And he really couldn't answer that. And like, I think that's when he like actually realizes that, oh, I like her. And then, also she, and yeah, it's just
and
like.
And Mitsuha notices at that time too. Like she was the one who set the two of them on the date, but she starts crying when she gets back to her main body. And I guess she also realizes at that moment that she likes Taki, right?
Yeah.
And she takes that trip out to Tokyo. And that's one of the major plot points, right? Because she gives her her hair tying thing, right?
Yeah.
On the train. But it was 3 years ago. But so she goes and meets Taki, but since it was 3 years ago, he doesn't recognize her at all. And they meet on the train. It's really awkward. She's like, hey, you're Taki. And she's like, who the heck are you?
Yeah,
because he's like, probably in middle school or something like, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It would be he would be studying for like, his college exam. And, you could see that he was like studying, but like he was... they're like in different time periods, and it was, he would have no idea because it would be 3 years from now when he would like know her, and she was kind of like, she was very saddened by that. She was like, oh,
yeah, but she gives him the kamikazari, right? The hair tie thing, right?
Yeah,
or the musubi, the braided, not the hair tie, it's the braided thing that her family made since she used to tie her hair. And he keeps that for all those years, right? Yeah. So, actually that would be a good segue to talk about, like, another one of the themes of the movie is this, they call it Musubi. So would you like to talk a little bit about the Musubi too?
Well, Musubi is kind of a Japanese word for, I guess you'd say tie. I guess that would be the best translation, or like bond, maybe? I don't know. It's difficult. Like, the musubu...
Well, that's the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
You can have multiple meetings, so, yeah.
Like musubu, like, the verb form is, like, to tie something, or to, like, I guess to connect someone, so, like, you could say, like, connect this person with this, or, like, I feel like that's why it's the connecting with Taki, and then, Mitsuha, and then also, like...
So, yeah, wait, let's break this down. There's multiple levels to Musubi. So the first level is that relationship aspect, right? We say, like, ningen kanke, human relationship, there's this bond that connects these two people together. So one musubi is that relationship, or that bond, that tying people together between Taki and Mitsuha. And, like, what's another level?
I would say, like, the time, like, or, like, like, I know they're in different time periods, but, like, they're still, like, connected, they're swapping bodies, so there's that, like, tie in that sense. There's this thing called Toki no Musubi, where it's kind of like, the connection of, like, time, olden past, and like there's that, and like what do you think? There's another tie, like you said.
I think another one is Musubi. It's kind of like in the Shinto tradition too, like that's the name of her god, right? The local goddess or something like that. And that's why they're like braiding, like another Musubi also means like braiding or tie, like threads together, right? And that's what she's doing. That's, she's doing it with that traditional, what is it? What would you call it? Like a weaving thing?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Weaving machine or whatever. Like.
Yeah, something like that. And they're like making those braids. But yeah. And it also, it's like when they go and visit that family shrine too, there's like that connection between the current world and the underworld, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's another, so the Twilight, that Katawaredoki too, that's the time when they meet each other 3 years in the past. And the Katawaredoki or Tasogaredoki, it's interesting, the word, even though it means twilight, the literal word or translation means kind of like, who are you, right?
Yeah. Like, it's old Japanese in the sense that like, you know, the order is different, but it's like, you know, who are you? But it's Tasogaredoki, and it's like, you know, it's like the dawn of the, it's like between, you know, like, it's a moment where like, you know, day and night, they're kind of like, it's like exact moment where, you know, switches from like, I guess, day to night. And it's considered kind of like mythical and, you know, spiritual moment. And like, you know, it's when the past and future connect, and, you know, the dead and, like living also like that's kind of like, you know, it kind of becomes more, you know, broad, and, you know, like that's when like, you know, you'd see spirits and like something like that, but like
yeah, but it's like this mystical time where the living world and the dead world, like the borders between worlds are kind of like blended together. Twilight, right? And in a way, the day and night is blended together in that similar way. And in Japanese culture, we believe it's that time where the dead and the living can relate. And in many ways, it's kind of really dark, but you can think of it also as like Taki is of the living world.
Yeah.
And Mitsuha is kind of like of the world of the dead too, because she dies in the comet. But like they're, in a way, they're connecting through the swapping of bodies, but they also like, they meet each other for the first time in that twilight when he goes and sees her too. So, yeah. Actually, so I guess let me go ahead and talk about this. The best scene. I'm just gonna go ahead and say mine because it connects into this. I thought the best scene, so when they see each other on the mountain for the first time, he goes to her hometown looking for her, and she, you know, they meet each other, and for the first time they're like, oh, you know, you're Taki, you're Mitsuha. It's like, oh, like, why the heck? And they start talking about all the different things that they're doing in the different bodies, but he's telling her, like, you need to warn your town and your people that the comet is coming, you need to evacuate everyone. And then they're like, oh, let's write our names on each other's hands or something so that we don't forget each other's names. And then, you know, he writes something on her hand, but then the moment when she tries to write her name on his hand, the twilight time, the Tasogaredoki ends, and she's not able to write her name on his hand, so he's not going to remember her name, even though you're like, oh, why the heck are they not remembering names? But anyway, he's going to forget her name. But a few minutes later, when she's like running and trying to like help tell the people to evacuate, she falls down and she's like she like trips while she's running down the mountain or something, and she's like injured, and then she like looks at her hand, and instead of his name Taki, he literally wrote like I love you or something like that. In that moment, I was like, oh, it's so romantic. It's so fucking cheesy, but, you know, just like not crying, but.
Yeah.
I don't know. You didn't like that scene, no?
No, I thought it was a really good scene. And like, where like.
Was it just too cheesy for you?
It's just like, it's kind of too bad that they missed the timing of when they wrote, like, you know, their name. He should have just wrote his name, and she should have just went ahamd and wrote, but like the Tasogaredoki. But
that's not as romantic, Benjamin.
The Tasogaredoki is like really a short time period, and, you know, like a blimp of time, and like really short span.
Yeah.
And like, that's why I guess that happened. And it was very like, I guess, romantic in that sense. Or kind of,
I don't know. You don't sound convinced.
Kind of.
I had a friend who watched it with me, and she was saying that it was not romantic at all. It was way melodramatic and overacting, and that it wasn't good, which I don't know. I think that person is just heartless, but no, but. What would you say was the best scene for you?
I really enjoyed the very ending where, like, they're in different trains, but like they see each other from the window, and they're like, oh, could he be? Could she be? And they're like, oh, and then they both run out of the train. They run and run and run, and they try to find each other. But when they see each other, they kind of pause because they don't know if that's the person. And then they're like, and they finally, like, he asks, like, could you be, what is your name? And then that's how the movie ends. But like, I thought that was a really good scene, and like where they finally like meet up in the real world. Like, even though like they met for a like short time, but that wasn't. I don't think it was actually. They didn't physically meet. I don't think so.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. That's a good point.
This is it's like 8 years from the 8 years from the incident, and like they've grown up. They're all adults and all that, but like it's really like I thought it was a really good like ending in that sense.
Do you think the ending was good that it didn't show what happened afterwards? It kind of left that ambiguous, like they met each other, but you don't quite know what. I mean, you pretty much assume that they got together after that, but
yeah,
a good.
I thought. It was,
Did you think that was a good ending?
I thought it was a pretty good ending. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think so? About that ending, I have a question. Do you think they had memories of that past when they were swapping bodies, or do you think are they meeting each other as like for the first time as if they don't know people? Because one of the things during the movie, they're forgetting, like, once their body swapping stops, they start to forget about those memories of when they were swapping bodies. And that's why they forget each other's names, too.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think when they meet each other for that last time, that they remembered what happened in the past? Or do you think, are they just like, oh, that person looks vaguely familiar, but they're kind of meeting each other for the first time, and they don't have any memories? What do you think?
I think that it's... I think that really does do with it because, I think the reason why he stops swapping bodies and why he starts to forget is because she's dead. And, like, they kind of, like, remember his grandmother, like, her grandmother, Mitsuha's grandmother is like, oh, I don't remember much, but this happened to me, too. And, like, she forgets, over time you start to forget because, they're no longer swapping bodies as much. And, like, I don't know, like the points he brought up. So,
So do you think they have the memories or no?
I would say they're losing the memories. Like, it's kind of part of it where they, like, with time, they just forget it, I would say.
So they know that they've been looking for someone their whole lives, but they don't remember who it was.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. And they have that vaguely familiar sense that, oh, maybe it's that person.
Yeah.
I guess connected to that too, like another theme of this movie is kind of like fate, right? It's almost as if these two people are connected by, well, in Japan we have the saying, unmei no akaito, the red thread of fate. There we go. But do you think, so I guess it was fate or destiny that these two people were supposed to end up together. This is more of your personal opinion. Do you think there's such a thing as fate? Do you think that you are fated to be together with someone? Do you believe in like destiny, that you are destined to be with someone?
No, I don't believe in destiny, but I would. This is going to my personal opinion, and I would say that, you kind of shape your own fate. Honestly, like you have your choice. Like, I think you have a choice for everything in the sense that, even if you feel like something that you have not chosen or like, what you don't want to do, if that happens, like you still have the choice to do it or to not do it or like, take the consequences of not doing it or like, or doing well. So like I don't think there's as much, fate. No, I don't believe in destiny, honestly. What about you?
Well, what about, let's say, can you choose where you're born, for an example?
No.
You could be born, like, doesn't that kind of shape a lot of your life, though? Like, if you're born in America or if you're born in Japan, if you're born in Italy or if you're born in, Russia, where, like, those things you don't have control over, but that really strongly influences who you are as a person, wouldn't you say? But that's not fate or that's not destiny?
I would say that, that kind of goes into the nature versus nurture argument, whether, like...
Okay. Yeah.
And, like, I would kind of go, like, where you're born, how you're raised is really important, but, like, some people totally ditch that, they go on their own way. And, again, that's a choice, like, some people, they believe in a certain faith or, like, they have this certain tradition, but they decide, I don't want to do this. So, in that sense, like, would you call that going against your fate or what? Like, you know, what is fate? And like, you know, I think there is certain things that are genetic and, you know, passed on, I guess, like, but like that's not fate. It's like something like that you still have a choice to like try to fix it or like, you know, so that's what I believe.
So you don't, I guess you would disagree with the idea that you're destined to be with someone like that, the thread of red destiny, that you're tied together to be with someone, that there's someone out there in the world who is special, especially that you're supposed to be with, a special somewhere out in the world. You don't believe that idea then?
I think it's I think it's a very romantic thing, but I totally disagree with that. I think love is like a choice. It's like it's a choice for you to like do what is best for the other person. It's not like the passion, it's not the feeling. It's like a decision. It's like a daily decision. Like you choose to love that person, you choose to care for that person, you choose to, you know, do the laundry for that person. I don't know, it's like you're choosing. It's just like that's love. That's what love is. So like saying like I feel like that's very not lazy in a sense, but like saying that there's someone for you. I mean, I guess that it's not necessarily lazy, but I feel like that, you know, it's whether or not you notice that people around you are also like, I feel like a person that like, you know, I guess you might call destiny is like someone that you choose to care for the most or that choose to love. So love isn't, I don't think love is a noun. It's like a verb. It's like what you do. It's your actions and like, you know, your choice and thought process and all that. So I don't know. What do you think? Is there...
I actually, well, I don't know. I'm not going to say much because I actually agree with you on most things. I really do agree that I think that people have a choice. Although I do believe that we are shaped a lot with our circumstances and where we're born. I do believe that in the end of the day, we do have a choice in matters. I think one of the problems with the idea of that there's one person out there in the world that you're fated to be together. I think that I don't think that idea works because all it takes is one couple at any point in history to get, you know, to marry the wrong person or to get together with the wrong person. And it just totally fucks up the rest of humanity. Because now everyone else is screwed. If you, like, one couple chooses the wrong person, you're together with the wrong person, then all the rest of humanity are like, oh, well, now we're all screwed because it's going to be a chain reaction. And now, how do you say, the person you were fated to be together chose someone else. And like, in that way, I just practically don't believe in the idea of fate or destiny that you were meant to be together with someone. Yeah. But I do believe, it's hard to describe. I do agree that once you choose to love someone, once you choose to be in a relationship with someone, I think that person becomes the person you're destined to be with, or the person you're fated to be with.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Because what's the whole point if you're like, oh, I'm destined to be with someone, so I'm not going to ask that girl out. Yeah. Or I'm destined to be with someone, and I'm not going to take this chance because I don't believe this is the person. Like, I think that's the head over heels. It kind of ruins the whole point. And also, at the same time, it can go the wrong way, too. Like, let's say a relationship ends, but you're like, oh, this is the destined person, and you keep pursuing that person. I mean, that's kind of stalkerish. Yeah. You know, when things are done, it's done, you know, or when, I don't know, in many ways, I really do think it isn't fate, it's choice. Yeah. And in many ways, you should honor other people's choices as well.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Strongly agree with that. And, you know, like, what if the person who's destined is, you know, around the world, you know, in like some African country, like, you don't know that, like, you know, but if you say it's destiny and like, it's just, I don't agree with.
Yeah. I think it's a very romantic concept. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, this movie is very romantic in many ways. Maybe as you were pointing out, there's a lot of plot holes, and there's a few things, if you think about it logically, a lot of things, I guess, if you think about it really logically, it doesn't quite make sense. But it's a very romantic movie.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it was about. So I enjoy it and like know that it wasn't like, you know, it's made for that like feeling or like craving. It's like, it's not made for like logic, you know, it has to be, it has to make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. It's like,
Well, that's what makes a movie good, I guess.
Yeah.
It's because it's an emotional movie. It speaks to our emotions in a way that logic cannot. And I think that's also what makes this so popular, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we move on? We've talked a lot about that last question. What do you think? I guess the last question is, what do you think about that body swapping mechanism? I guess we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but the grandma obviously experienced it when she was younger too, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And do you think I guess it's something that happens with that Miyamizu family?
Yeah, I think so. Like the grandmother was saying that like the grandfather kind of predicted their wildfire, and also like I'm pretty sure like going back all the years, and there was like when there's certain danger or trouble, like they kind of in the dreams they like swap bodies and like warned each other or whatever, and like I think that definitely happened, and it was something that's been passed on.
So it's like a mechanism kind of to protect the town or protect the village from danger, maybe?
Yeah.
Like whenever a disaster or something was going to happen, like the people in the shrine would swap bodies in a way, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are there any other things you want to talk about from the movie?
So far, no.
Yeah. Would you recommend this movie? I mean, we always ask this question at the end of the anime or the manga, but...
Yeah, I mean, I would highly, highly recommend it. Definitely check this
out. Has there ever been a manga or an anime that we've covered that we don't recommend?
Probably not.
I guess that's the point. If we wouldn't recommend it, we probably wouldn't be talking about it,
we wouldn't be talking about it in the first place, but...
Yeah. It's definitely a great movie. Do you think it's as good as a Ghibli movie, or... That's another thing that was interesting. I was reading, a lot of people thought it was good, but it wasn't a masterpiece in the same way that Ghibli films are. That it wasn't, like, it was a good movie, but it didn't quite have the depth that a, like, Miyazaki film has. Would you agree or disagree? What do you think?
I would say that there was a depth, and...
Okay.
That it was...
So you think it's as good as one of those movies?
Yeah. I would say so, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I think we should wrap it up soon. What do you think?
I agree. It was a very good movie. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. It's worth your time. Like, it's a movie that...
Did you watch it with a friend? What did your friend think, by the way?
The friend thought it was like really, good and romantic and all that, and he enjoyed it a lot. But
he also had some problems with the movie that we kind of talked about too, right?
He was like, why do they forget their names and all that, and
yeah. Okay, cool. Well, so you got midterms coming up soon?
Yeah, I do. Fun.
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, you only said you have one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. It's not as bad as having 3 or 4. So, Actually, how in the world do you only have one midterms?
I don't know.
I'm jealous. What the heck? You're a freshman. You should suffer more. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
What? So what midterms do you have?
It's just for woodcraft. Doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Like, because...
Is it a paper exam, or do you have to turn in a piece of work? Or
I think it's a paper exam.
Wow, on woodworking.
Yeah.
They were like, describe the 3 different pieces of wood that are being used for this project.
Yeah.
Tell me the correct procedure of using this machine. I don't know. What are you even going to be tested on?
Yeah. I don't know. Like, just basically how the procedures and different kinds of woods and all that. Like, we did do a lot. Yeah, so.
Alright, okay. Cool. Well, let's wrap it up. Well, thank you, minasan, for listening to our podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Give us a review and rate us on iTunes and everything. We would appreciate that greatly. Please share this with your friends as well. Next week, I think we'll have another guest on, so we're really looking forward to that. And if you're interested in anime or manga, please send us recommendations at our website, tachiyomi-manga.com. You can send us emails at this tachiyomi-manga@gmail.com as well. If you'd like to join the podcast as a guest, we'd love to have you as well. So, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll see you at our next podcast. ではまたね。
さよなら。
さよなら。